everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 123. So just a quick reminder that all of my booking services, both one-on-one services and group classes, both virtually and in person, are now available for online booking. So you can head to paulataylorenergy.com, click on the book online link, and book a service with me. And as always, if you are enjoying the show, there's a lot of ways you can support me. You can leave comments, you can rate the podcast, you can also donate to me directly financially to help support this work. There's a link on paulataylorenergy.com under the podcast tab, and you can join my Patreon community, the Spiritual Integration Soul Tribe. And this is a space I've created for safety, for heart-centered connection, and I'm excited to see where it goes as we grow, so you are welcome to join me there. So tonight we're going to talk about navigating unexpected difficulties, and I'm already kind of chuckling to myself just because if you watch the show, you listen to the show, you know these topics usually come out of my personal life, and so we're going to talk a little bit about what happens when unexpected difficulties come up, because sometimes things are going really well and we're feeling really good. And sometimes I have a different analogy that I'll get into later, but I use the analogy on the show fairly often that sometimes I feel like I ran into a wall or I hit a brick wall and I kind of slid down it. I get this cartoon image of that happening. And, when we have a history of trauma, especially, and just being human, we have a tendency to be really hard on ourselves when we're not feeling very good, when things aren't going well. And so last week I did a group sound healing session, a sacred sound journey on Tuesday. It was amazing. I had my new bowls with me. We just had a really expansive, beautiful experience. And I came home and I noticed I was like feeling a little cranky, and I thought, well, that's weird. Like, this was such a beautiful experience, and I wonder why. I didn't think too much about it. And then the next day I got up and you may hear me coughing a little bit. I'm having some asthma problems. It's really windy here. And that's another thing that's been kind of not going well, driving me a little bit crazy, is this like weird little asthma cough that kind of comes up at inopportune moments. So then the next day our dryer broke. And it was like we were getting ready to go to Mexico to take a short trip to kind of recharge, which is my spot, my recharging place. The ocean, the beach is my recharging place. And so it was like we were trying to do laundry and then the dryer wasn't working. And then I was like, well, something feels off in the house. I'm going to clear the energy in my house. And one of the ways I like to do it, especially if I'm busy, I had a lot of other things going on. Sometimes I will do it with intention, just like I would do as I was giving a service to someone else. I'll bring a bowl around, I'll play it. And I was like, I don't have a lot of time. I'm just going to play some music on my speakers. And I have speakers in multiple rooms. And so I can play music for clearing, sound for clearing in multiple rooms, and just kind of let it play. That's one of the ways I clear my own house. And none of my speakers were working. None. Not a single one of my speakers. They're linked, and they're linked to my Spotify. So usually I can go into Spotify, I can play my music, I can tell it to play everywhere. It'll play in every speaker. Not a single speaker was working. I unplugged them, I plugged them back in, like on and off that day as I was doing other things. Nothing. Wouldn't play. Just for no reason that I could tell. So I was starting to get this feeling like what is happening here? You know, like things are just not going right. I don't understand. And so we were supposed to leave and go down to the beach on Saturday. And I actually was not going to do a show tonight. I think I mentioned that briefly last week. But we got a call early in the morning before we left that my husband had a family emergency. And so we had to cancel our trip. And that's kind of when I hit the wall and slid down. It was like, I don't understand why things are not going well. There's a lot going on, and I don't need to go in. I think you get the drift. You get my point. Sometimes it's like It's just the punches keep coming. I was thinking about the show and I was thinking of all these cliches, like when it rains, it pours. And, we have all of these kind of sayings for a reason. And so I want to talk about my experience of going through this, just how it's been going for me, because I know I'm not alone in this. And it has felt like a navigation. I almost use the word negotiation too, like negotiating unexpected difficulties. Because the first thing I'm going to say, and I say this very often, is that life is not easy. Life is a series of ups and downs, and without the downs, we don't have the ups. So sometimes, especially when we're on this spiritual journey, and especially if we've kind of been on an up, it's when the down hits, it seems like it comes out of nowhere. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, something happens and we sort of see it coming or whatever, but sometimes it's a little bit like getting smacked in the face or running into that brick wall. It's like, where did this come from? Things were going so well. And so the first thing I did, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in this, especially in this, I talk a lot about the outside is a reflection of the inside, right? So one of my first questions was like, am I bringing this on? Am I doing something to cause this? Am I putting, some muddy frequency out that for some reason is getting reflected back to me, because I was feeling really clear and really expanded, and I don't quite understand. And the problem with that is that, like, yes, that's true on a grand scale, that's true. But also sometimes poop happens. That's really the long and short of it. And so there's a little bit of a trap there that we can fall into, where we start blaming ourselves when things don't go right. And that leads nowhere good. It just doesn't lead anywhere good. It doesn't serve us. It doesn't really serve the situation. Sometimes stuff's just bad. Sometimes bad things happen. Bad things happen to good people. There's a cliche. And it's true. Just sometimes things are difficult, and sometimes we weren't expecting it, and it seems like it comes out of nowhere. So the first thing I did was kind of start thinking about, what did I do to deserve this? Am I putting out bad energy? And again, not super helpful to go down that road, but I did look at it a little bit, and I was like, but I'm not. I really have been in a beautiful, expanded space. And so then I probably didn't acknowledge it at that point yet, but then I got kind of angry, because it was like, well, wait a minute, I'm putting this beautiful stuff out. Again, why are these difficulties coming up? Why are bad things happening? And again, it's just life. And it's one of the hardest things about being alive is the fact that we are going to encounter loss. We are going to encounter betrayal. We are going to encounter just yuckiness. It's just part of being in this physical realm. And so the first thing that happened, I kind of mentioned the first thing that happened, but kind of in the sequence of events, was that I went into what I would call denial about not feeling good about where things were. And my throat just went, oh. Like, I was like, oh no, I'm a spiritual person and I'm expanded and I can't be depressed and I can't be sad and I can't be angry. We've talked about this before. And again, I'm talking to myself, for myself here, but I know I'm not talking to only myself, because I know I'm not the only person who's guilty of this. So the first thing I did was kind of, a lot of resistance came up. That is the word that came to me later. I was resisting acknowledging that I was upset, that I was unhappy, that I was feeling sad and depressed. And as I started to get into those emotions, I started being able to name them. But this is the problem. Here's another cliche for you. What you resist persists. So by telling myself, by not even being willing to kind of go into my feelings, to acknowledge that I wasn't feeling good emotionally, I've shut them down. I'm pushing my emotions down because I'm resisting. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel that. I'm a spiritual person. I don't want to feel sad or depressed or angry or whatever it is. So I was pushing things down. I was resisting. And I did that for about a day. I kind of just laid around, and I was a little bit in shock because I was really looking forward to this trip. I needed that recharge. And then I felt guilty about being kind of angry and upset that I didn't get to go, because it was a situation that was totally beyond anyone's control. And again, I don't need to go into that, other than to say I was not allowing myself to have the feelings that were coming up about that, because again, I was like, oh, I'm a spiritual person. I don't get depressed anymore, blah, 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 which I have literally said those words on the show before, which makes me laugh. So that lasted for about a day, and then I realized I was in resistance. I was like, oh, I'm really resisting this. And here's the thing, and I don't think I realized this until I said it to a friend earlier today. When we are really first starting this journey, when we're really in our trauma, when we're really triggered, more times than not, the majority of the time, we're operating out of a triggered state. We do not feel good. It does not feel good to be triggered. And as we take this journey, as we start to shed those trauma frequencies, we start to look at things. It's a difficult journey. It's hard work. But one of the advantages of being kind of further along in that journey is that I totally just lost my train of thought. That's so funny. Oh, I really did. It's just gone. Let's see. We usually feel better. Okay, I got it back. I'm here. I'm present. So at the beginning of our trauma journey, we're really triggered, and being triggered doesn't feel good. And I was saying this to my friend earlier. I had a lot of depression, and I've talked about that before in my young adulthood, especially my teenage years, my early 20s. Life was really hard. And then I started doing this work, and then it started to get easier. That is one of the things that happens, is that when we do encounter difficulties, we're a little more resilient because we're not carrying so many frequencies of trauma. But there's always the fear that we're going to get sucked back into this really dark place. I have that fear 100%. And that is where the resistance was coming from. If I acknowledge that I'm depressed, if I acknowledge that I'm sad or angry or having grief feelings, griefy, as I like to say, I'm going to get stuck there. And so I had some resistance, and then I recognized my resistance. And then I was like, oh, yep, I know what to do here. I need to stop resisting. But there is a fear there that I will never come back out. And that is why this work is so hard. And that is why a lot of us never even go down this path, because those feelings are so scary. I remember years ago when I was in therapy with my mentor, Sherry Ford, I remember talking about how I didn't want to have a confrontation with someone because it was uncomfortable and scary. And she said, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I said, I will die. And she said, emotions won't kill you, but it sure friggin' feels like they will sometimes. They're big and they're overwhelming and they affect our physical body. I have no energy. I'm not sleeping well. There is a cascade of things that happen when we have these, what feel like heavier emotions. And I'm not going to call them negative emotions. I just saw a couple videos today where people were using that phrase high vibration or higher vibes. And it just, we are never going to be in a state where we don't have the heaviness around, that it doesn't come through us, that is part of being human, is being on all levels of being, is having all vibrations, is having high vibrations and low vibrations. And again, the earth has a beautiful low vibration. Technically, that is just not a correct term. But the implication there too is this toxic positivity idea that if you are evolved enough, I use that word in quotes, evolved enough, then you won't have negative emotions anymore. You won't have bad feelings anymore. It is not true. That is a giant crock of crap. And that is why I'm doing the show. That is why I am being transparent and honest. No matter how much of this work you do, there are going to be times that are difficult. There are going to be times that you don't want to get out of bed. There are going to be times that you feel sad or depressed or lonely or angry. That is part of being human. And trying to trick yourself out of those emotions is what toxic positivity is. And the way I like to explain this sometimes because when people are talking about high and low vibes, they're just talking about muddy vibes to me. But if you listen to your favorite song with the bass all the way down, it's going to sound pretty empty because the bass is the support of the song. So we need low vibrations. We need high vibrations. We want our vibrations to be clear. I'm clear about my vibrations right now. I'm clear that I am dealing with some difficult emotions, and that's okay. It's okay. So I stopped resisting my emotions, and then I just started acknowledging I'm sad and I'm depressed and I'm angry. That maybe even just came today. And then I realized that there were some grief things going on because I had some days off, and I thought I'm going to start writing my memoir about infertility and recurrent pregnancy loss. And for some reason, it did not compute that bringing all of that stuff up might bring up some grief. So there's been a lot of heaviness. That's the way I'll put it, heaviness. But here's what I kind of realized. This is why I call this navigating unexpected difficulties. So the first navigation was like, oh, I'm going to go around this big rock in my path that tells me I can't even acknowledge my emotions. I can't bring awareness to my emotions. There's this big toxic positivity rock that says, no, you can't be sad. You're a spiritual teacher. I'm going to go around that rock. I mean, I kind of got stuck there. Let's be honest. For a little while, I was like banging my head against the rock a little bit. And then I was like, oh no, wait, I can go around this rock. I can admit to myself, yep, I've got some painful feelings right now. And that's okay. I'm going to go around that rock. That was my navigation. So then the next thing that happened was that I just gave in and I was like, yep, I'm just going to be depressed and it's just is what it is. And I'm going to be sad and I'm going to lay around and just, kind of be. But the interesting thing that happened here, I've just been rewatching some things about spiritual tool building. I was redoing some things on the website. There's a little short video I put under my services explaining where I talked about what is spiritual tool building. Why do I call it that? And, you can go back. There's a whole show called Spiritual Tool Building if you want to go back and watch or listen to that. But what I realized is there's a reason that we have a spiritual practice. And another word for practice might be habit. And sometimes we think of habits as only being bad, but we also have good habits. So the next thing that happened to me is because I have such a strong spiritual practice, because I have spent so many years building tools, collecting tools, learning how to use my tools, knowing when, using my intuition, learning how to use my intuition to know when I need a tool, what tool is right. I have a very strong practice and that's actually a part of spiritual tool building. I just realized I don't know that I ever mentioned that before, because when you have this practice, why do we practice? One of the reasons we practice is so that when things are really hard, we have this practice to fall back on. We have this habit built. So I have a very strong practice, a very strong habit at this point of self-care. And I said this to a few people recently. I thought I'm maybe going to make a shirt. Self-care is survival. We have used the term self-care as something kind of fluffy. Like, oh, self-care, I'm going to go to the spa. I'm going to get my nails done. Self-care is something that people sometimes kind of look down on a little bit. And for people who are sensitive to energy, which is everyone, whether you're aware of it or not, self-care is survival. Self-care is exactly how we get through difficult times. Having this habit, having this practice of self-care. So I have a strong practice of self-care. I have a strong habit built. So even though I was like, I'm just going to stop resisting, I'm going to be depressed, it's fine, I'm just going to be sad, whatever, I'm not going to do anything. These practices that I practice so often are so ingrained in me, they're so habitual that I was still kind of practicing my practice. I was still doing my practice. I was still doing some of the things that I normally do for self-care. So like on Monday, I was working in my medical job, and one of my self-care habits is to take a 15-minute break and do movement. And I almost didn't do it. I thought, I'm just so tired and I'm heavy and I don't want to move. And I thought, well, I'll just put the music on, because I tell people this all the time. Just put the music on. Just start there. You don't have to go any further. I put the music on and I thought, I can't. I call it free form movement. I like to dance and just move my energy. Didn't have it in me. That's okay. I thought, well, I'll just do some simple Qigong exercises just to move energy, because I knew my energy was fairly stagnant. That heaviness causes your energy to kind of get stuck. And so I did my movement practice. I did 15 minutes of Qigong. And the interesting thing about this is that all of this stuff is going to contribute to me moving through these difficulties, moving through these difficult emotions more quickly and with more ease. I'm not doing them with that intention. I'm just doing what I do. That's just what I do, because it's a practice. It's a habit. So I did my movement practice. Then Tuesday, I realized there's some heavy emotions going on here, and I'm not quite sure exactly what these are or where these are coming from. This is not all about, not going on this trip. There's something else happening here. So I know how to move emotional energy. I pulled out some of my tools for that, and I started using music. And then I sat down at my piano and I started singing, the kirtan I wrote for pregnancy loss, which I still need to record and release. And I started crying, and I was like, oh, there's some grief going on here. And that's the problem with emotions. They can be really confusing no matter how long you've done this work, because they're layered. There was some disappointment about not taking this trip, and there's some worry about what's going on in the kind of world around me and my extended family. And then there's the stress of all the dryer breaking. There's layers of emotion, and then there's this grief that came up that seemingly out of nowhere, except, I decided to write a book about my infertility, and hey, it's stirring up all the emotions again. And sometimes we don't see things. Sometimes the awareness takes a little while. So these were these navigations. It was like, well, I've got this practice, and so my practice is kind of pushing me down this path. I'm doing my movement exercises. I'm doing my emotional release exercises because it's a practice. So all of that contributes to me moving through these difficulties, through me keeping my energy flowing as much as I can. Then I had a conversation with a friend, and she was reminding me to be gentle with myself. And I was like, oh yeah, that's another tool. I reached out for help. That is a huge one. I reached out for help, and I went to a friend's house Sunday, and I talked to her about my feelings. That's another way that I finally started identifying what was going on. I admitted I was having a hard time. I texted another friend. She called me. We had a conversation. So all of these sort of spiritual tools are it's like I'm navigating a path, right? And the way I said I was going to use a different analogy, because the one I usually use is that I hit a wall and slid down. I was thinking about Wile E. Coyote and the old cartoons where he's chasing the Roadrunner. And at least once, probably an episode, he runs out past the end of a cliff, doesn't realize it for a second, kind of looks around, and then all of a sudden realizes there's nothing below him, and then he falls. And that's kind of how I felt. But what I realized was the other image that came to me was Homer Simpson falling down a mountain and going, do, 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 every time he hits a little ledge. So I was thinking about it this way, and it was like, well, I got shoved off this cliff, or somehow ran off this cliff, didn't realize I was off the cliff, and fell. And then I started hitting these ledges on my way down, do, do, do. But because I have this practice, because I have this awareness, because I've done this work for so long, Each of these ledges actually has a little gift on it. So there's the gift of doing my movement practice. There's the gift of doing my practice to move emotional energy. There's the gift of reaching out to a friend. There's the gift of my friend reminding me to be gentle with myself and landing in a soft pile of fluffy pillows and allowing myself to be held and allowing myself to be gentle and to admit, again, everybody has difficulties. It's part of life. And so being on this spiritual path doesn't mean you're not going to have difficulties. It doesn't mean the difficulties won't affect you, because you're still human. You're still in a body. You still have emotions. We still have trauma frequency that no matter how much we clear, sometimes we get triggered. It just happens. Things happen. Poop happens, as the other cliche goes. So the importance of being on the spiritual path is that we can bring awareness to these things probably a lot more quickly than we would. You know, it took me a day or so to, I'm having a rough time. I'm going to admit it to myself. It didn't take me 2 years. I didn't run away from my emotions for years. It was like a day. And then it was like, all right, I'm going to be in the emotions. And I know how to do that. And I know how to get these emotions to move because I have all of these tools. And so I'm still in the difficulties. I'm still dealing with the difficult emotions. But I'm moving within that. I'm moving through that. There's some flow in that. Instead of getting totally stuck and being completely unable to move or function, I'm allowing that movement to happen. And again, some of it is not even intentional because I have a practice and the practice is sort of moving me forward. I have this practice of Wind Down Wednesdays. I thought, well, maybe I won't do the show this week. I had said I wasn't going to, but I'm here. And this is an important topic because, again, every single person has periods of difficulty in their lives. And sometimes they're huge periods of difficulty. And that's another thing. I mentioned that I had some grief coming up. Grief is cumulative. So whenever grief comes up, it triggers all the other grief you've ever had. So, you know, if the grief about my infertility is coming up and I'm feeling griefy, then I think, oh, March is the month that my dad died. And then that grief comes up. And so allowing that to flow, allowing that to happen, emotions are meant to flow through us and be released. And the reason they get stuck is because we resist them. And so when we can recognize that resistance and let go of it, no matter how scary it is, no matter how we might think, oh, I got stuck here before, I don't want to get stuck here. This spiritual path, this spiritual practice allows us these gifts, these tools that we use. I know how to work. I know how to keep my physical energy moving. I know how to get my emotional energy moving. I know how to ask for help, whether it's from a friend or from my spiritual support team or both. I asked my dragon, Leithor, I said, I don't have it in me to make sure I'm protected right now. I need you to do that for me. And so he's out there with his wings real big, making sure that my energy field stays nice and protected because it's not something that I have the bandwidth, the capacity to check in with right now. And the more tools we build and the more we practice with those tools, the better we are at using them. And so then when we do get in this period of difficulty, it's still difficult. It still sucks. It's still uncomfortable and painful and and I don't like it. I'm never going to like it. We're never going to like it, but we don't get stuck there. And we don't get stuck in the denial. We don't get stuck in the denial of saying like, oh no, I'm fine. Everything's great. No, I'm great. That does not serve anyone. It doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve the people around us. The people around us might be uncomfortable when we're sad or depressed or angry, but that denial serves them and us less because those feelings are not gone when we push them down. They start to come out in other ways. They start to come out in physical dis-ease. This little asthma cough that I've had going on for like 6 weeks now, the lungs are associated with grief in Chinese medicine. Just hit me today or yesterday for some reason. This is that grief that I am still releasing. I had a big release of grief in my first craniosacral training class I've talked about multiple times over the last several weeks or month. That doesn't just go away. Sometimes more of it gets stirred up, right? So we have a release, it brings something to the surface, and it's so funny. That's how this cough feels. It's like it's like a tickle. It's right at the edge. And I know if I keep working through this, if I keep doing my practice, it will move through and out of me. But that process is sometimes really uncomfortable. And that is why we ask for help. That is why we do this journey together. That is why I do this show. That is why I am being authentic and transparent with you, telling you like, bleh, bleh, that's how I feel, bleh, today. But I'm here, and we're going to meditate, and we're going to move energy, and we're going to have faith. We're going to trust in this process, and we're going to know that life is not always the difficulty, right? We got the ups, we got the downs. So we're in a down right now. I'm in a down right now. The up will come back. And the interesting thing is that the more we expand, the more space we make for that journey, sometimes the higher the ups get, but maybe that means sometimes the lower the lows get too. So we continue our practice. We're gentle with ourselves, and we use these tools to keep things moving to the best of our ability as we navigate unexpected difficulties. So for tonight's meditation, we're actually going to do a very similar meditation to what we did last week. Last week, we asked our spiritual support team to come in and hold us. We allowed ourselves to be held. We're going to do the same thing this week. However, I'm going to challenge you, and this is a bit of a challenge. I'm going to challenge you to do this in a slightly different way. And if that doesn't work for you, if you're not there, if that's fine, I will give you some other prompts as well. But what I'm going to challenge you to do tonight is to hold yourself and actually you can picture yourself just as you are now. You can picture yourself as a child. You can picture yourself in your most traumatic moment of your life. You can picture yourself as a baby. That might be easier. Sometimes I will give you other prompts. Picture yourself as a baby animal or something that's easy to love. Picture yourself as yourself if you can tonight. Picture yourself as you now, you in the past, whatever it is, and hold yourself. Give yourself that love. And the way we're going to do this, I don't usually go into this much detail, but I want you to have some options tonight. And sometimes when I'm in the meditation, when I'm channeling, I kind of forget my intention. We're going to invite your spiritual support team to surround you. So they're going to be still holding the space, but I want you to actually hold yourself. If you can't get there, that's okay. Invite someone from your spiritual support team to do it. That's what we did last week. But it's important to be able to give this love to yourself. This is part of that being gentle with yourself, allowing yourself to be loved, recognizing, uncovering that light, letting that light shine. All of that is really about this self-love. And the hardest times sometimes it is to love ourselves is when we're not feeling good. It's easy to love yourself when things are going well and everything's going your way. And it's like, yeah, I'm great. I got this. I'm doing it. Yeah, woo. When you are in the difficulties, that is when that negative self-talk comes out. And that is one of my fears. I said I have a fear of getting stuck kind of in that heaviness. I have a fear of getting stuck back in that negative self-talk that I had in my mind for so long. You can't do this. You're not good enough. You're not worthy. All of those kind of things. There's a danger of that coming up when we're in the difficulties, when we're in that triggered state. And so if we can hold ourselves with love, if we can, even for this next 15-minute meditation, intentionally affirm positive self-talk and loving ourselves and holding ourselves and creating that space for unconditional love. Unconditional love means unconditional. If you're sad, you're still loved. If you're angry, you're still loved. If you're lashing out, you're still loved. That is what unconditional means. And it's a really hard for us to get to that space, because most of us have never really received it, because our capacity for doing that here has been limited. It doesn't need to be, and it will change. And on the spiritual level, there is no limitation on that. So come with me as far as you can into this idea of holding yourself with love. Don't put it outside yourself if you can tonight. Make sure that it's you holding yourself. And that's an even more powerful way to allow yourself to be held and to be soothed and to be comforted, because we all need that. Whether you're in a difficult time right now or not, everybody needs to be held and comforted and soothed sometimes. And again, we practice in the best times so that we can continue the practice during the worst times. So let's meditate together. So for this meditation, find a really comfortable, safe position. Maybe you're lying down. If you're sitting up, allow yourself to be supported. Maybe wrap yourself in a cozy blanket for this one. You want to feel really safe while you're doing this meditation. So whatever that looks like for you, take a few moments here and make that a reality. Make your little bed of pillows. Make a cozy bolster for under your knees if you're lying on your back. Give yourself a pillow for your head if you need. Find a place where you can sit and recline back a little bit. Whatever works, just let it feel really safe and really comfortable. And let's start with our 3 to 5 deep oxytocin breaths. One of the easiest and fastest tools I know of to tell the body that it's safe, to bring ourselves into that ease response. So nice deep breath in through the nose, let the belly float out, breathe all the way down to the bottom of your belly, and then we're going to sigh that out with that audible ha sound, moving from high to low. And again. And once more. Take a few more of those if you'd like. Breathing out through the mouth encourages some release of tension, of energy we've been carrying around that's not serving us. Do a little bit of gentle movement here. Maybe moving your head back and forth. Just 20% of your capacity here. We're not going as far as we can. We're not stretching. We're just moving the body a little bit. Finding where the body is in space. Letting it know that it's safe. If you're lying down, maybe you just pump your feet, move your ankles and wrists a little bit. Maybe you just wag your head side to side. Take a nice deep breath, sigh it out through the mouth, add that audible ha if it feels good. And then as you're ready, come nice and still. Invite your energetic sanctuary into your space. If you're not familiar with that practice, just imagine that you're sitting or lying right now in the most beautiful place you've ever been, the safest space you can possibly imagine. This is your sanctuary. Nothing can enter this space unless you invite it. Nothing can come into this unless it is for your highest good. This is a beautiful space to come and allow yourself to be held and loved and comforted and soothed, because everything that happens here is for your highest good, is safe and loving. So within your sanctuary, just notice where you are. Get a little feel for your surroundings. If you can't visualize this, don't worry about it. Everything we do is with intention. So just intend that you're in the safest space you can possibly be in and you're there. Maybe you're not seeing anything. Maybe you're getting in other senses. Maybe you can smell what it smells like. Maybe you smell your grandmother's bread baking, or you smell the salt air of the ocean, or you smell the pine trees of the mountains. Maybe you can feel what you're sitting or lying on in this space. Maybe you can hear a sound that makes you feel safe and loved. And maybe you're just describing this to yourself, and that's completely fine too. There's no rules about this. Just allow yourself to be in this space as much as you can be. It's so safe here. It's so calming. It's so soothing. Everything about this practice is bringing you more love for yourself. And then as you're ready, I want you to picture that some version of you is standing in front of you. It can be the version of you exactly as you look during this meditation. It can be a younger version of you. It can be a child version of you. It can even be a baby version of you, if that makes this easier. If you're doing trauma work and you feel safe enough to do that, you might look at the version of yourself who encountered the trauma. And if that doesn't feel safe, that's completely fine. The safest thing to do is to see yourself perhaps as a baby, or maybe to see yourself as you look right now. And for a moment, you're just standing there, you're just looking at yourself, noticing what judgments come up, letting them go, letting them just float by like clouds in the sky. Around you in a circle, you'll notice your spiritual support team, ancestors, maybe other kinds of beings, people who've passed on, animals, pets, fairy tale creatures like dragons and unicorns. There can be anything in your spiritual support team. These are the beings in the spiritual plane who are here to hold you, to give you love, to give you guidance, to keep you safe. And so for this meditation, just allow them to be in a circle around you. They're not touching you. You can make them as close or far as you'd like. You can invite as many of them in as you wish. Just let them hold that space. Let them create this really deep feeling of safety. And then as you're ready, I want you to look again or feel again or just imagine again this version of you that's in front of you. And I want you to hold this person. If it's the you of right now, maybe you just give them an embrace. And you can invite them to embrace you as well. You can hold each other. If it's a younger version of you, maybe you hold them more like you would hold a child, or you're holding a baby. If this is completely inaccessible, if it just doesn't feel like it's happening tonight, don't worry. You can come back and do this again when you're ready. You can invite one of your spiritual support team members to come and hold you. Or you can just invite that whole circle to come and hold you. You can also use an inanimate object if that feels safer, if that feels accessible, like wrapping a cozy blanket around you. The goal here is to feel held, to feel safe, to feel comforted and soothed. If you're in the space where you're holding yourself, first of all, notice that there might be some discomfort there. There might be some feelings that come up. Sometimes when we're having resistance, we have thoughts like, this is stupid, or I don't like this, or this isn't working. Notice those judgments and just let them go. They're not serving you. It doesn't hurt you to sit here for 5 more minutes in this space with this visualization. Let the judgments come. Don't resist them, but then just let them float through. Maybe you tell yourself, well, I know this is stupid, but I'm going to stick it out. I'm just going to do it. And as that begins to move through you, perhaps now you notice that you're having some feelings. Maybe they're difficult feelings. Maybe it feels uncomfortable to hold yourself. Maybe your feelings of self-worth are coming up and you're wondering if you're worthy of this love. You're thinking about your so-called flaws and the things people have said to you about your body and how you look and your personality and your too muchness and your not enoughness. All of that is valid. Let that come up if it comes up. And keep holding yourself anyway. And then set the intention that despite anything else that's coming through here, we set the intention that we are holding ourselves with love. Even if this is just a fake it till you make it situation, even if you're just saying this, you're setting the intention, you don't really feel it in your body, that's okay. Just set the intention. I hold myself with love. Say it out loud if you can. I hold myself with love. I hold myself with love. And I receive that love. I hold myself with love and I receive that love. And notice now, there's actually a beautiful flow of energy opening up between you and your other self, whatever version of the self you're doing this with. There's a heart-to-heart connection opening up here just by saying those words. I allow myself to receive love, especially. I give myself love and I allow myself to receive love. So we're sending love out. We're bringing the love back in. And just let this flow happen. Let your heart space open if you can. Let yourself be heart to heart with your other self, whether you're holding the child version or the baby version of yourself to your chest, whether you and the adult version are embracing in your heart to heart. Let this heart connection open. Sometimes it's easier to do this if we're picturing someone else, but as much as you can for this meditation, really see yourself, see your own face. I send myself love and I receive that love. If this is the child version of you, a younger version of you, perhaps they've never heard those words before. So just let whatever comes up, come up here. If you start crying, that's fine. Let it flow. You need to take some nice deep breaths. Absolutely do that. If you need to step away, absolutely do that. Keep yourself safe here. But know that the energy that's coming in is completely safe. It is for your highest good. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's bringing up feelings of grief or even anger, fear, sadness, this is movement of emotional energy for your highest good. This is love opening, it's loosening the grip of some of these emotions that have maybe been stuck in you and in this other version of yourself. So let this flow continue as much as you can. Let yourself be held here. Hold yourself and let yourself be held. I hold myself and I allow myself to be held. Say that out loud if possible. I hold myself and I allow myself to be held. You can use either of those affirmations to direct your intention here. I give myself love and I allow myself to receive that love. I hold myself and I allow myself to be held. Just keep repeating those out loud or in your head. Just let this flow continue for a few more moments here. Ooh, ay, ay. Ooh, ay, 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 ay. Ooh, ay, 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 ay. Ooh, ay, ay, ay. Ooh, ay, ay, ay. I give myself love, and I receive that love. I hold myself, and I allow myself to be held. I am loved. I am loved. I am loved. Washi denaye, okayenea, okayena ega. Let this love flow directly into both your heart spaces now, both you and this other version of yourself. Receive this love as much as you can. Let go of any judgments that come up. Remember that you can come back and repeat this as many times as you'd like. And as you're ready, very slowly, with love, with reverence, with respect, release that other version of yourself. Release that embrace. Let that version of yourself go with love, with gratitude. And then just stand or sit or lie in this circle of support for a moment. Receive that love from your spiritual support team, from these beings who care so much about you, who are invested in your safety and health and well-being. Just receive that love for a moment. So much love here. Take a nice big deep breath, sigh it out. And as you're ready, with gratitude, release that energetic sanctuary. Perhaps your circle of support would like to stay with you, and that's completely fine. If you're in a space where it's safe and you'd like to drift off to sleep, you can allow that. What a beautiful way to be held and rocked into sleep. If you're coming back to the rest of your day or evening, reintroduce some of that gentle movement, maybe shrugging your shoulders, moving your torso around, or just circling the wrists and the ankles a little bit. Very slowly, just coming back to your conscious mind, coming back to your room, to the space you're in. And affirm with me out loud, if possible, I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body, and I allow myself to receive love. I am fully present in my body, and I allow myself to be held. I am fully present in my body and I am safe. Take 2 or 3 more deep breaths here. Do any final movements that you'd like to before you come fully back. Satnam. The truth of your identity is that you are worthy of being held and being loved. No matter the situation, no matter the emotion you're feeling, no matter what you're going through, you are always worthy of being held and being loved. You are held and loved. Take 1 or 2 more deep breaths as you'd like, and as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Allow yourself to be held for the rest of this evening and the rest of this week. Know that you deserve it no matter what. Unconditionally, you deserve love. Have a beautiful rest of your evening and week, and I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesdays.